Gecko is hauled out in Townsville, Australia, and Dan and I are up to our elbows in work. The main purpose of the haul out is to replenish the bottom paint, and if you saw the last episode, we replaced the bushings on the rudder. On the way to the dry dock, the engine stopped spitting out cooling water and we had to run it an extra 20 minutes to get onto the dock. Watch the previous episode for the full details of that story. The projects we're tackling in this episode are dealing with osmosis and figuring out what went wrong with the engine. I've determined that there's nothing wrong with the impeller and no blockages in the line between the raw water intake and the impeller pump, so the plot thickens. Good morning from the boatyard. We got a really early start this morning because we have a lot to tackle. So I'm troubleshooting the engine. So I've been talking to Chris, my brother, just so lucky to have this family. And I was like, did I destroy the engine? Ooh, unflattering sunlight. And he said the first thing to do is to try to turn it over. He was like, you ran it for 20 minutes without water. So another like quick turn on and then off again isn't gonna make a difference. So I turned it over for like 2 seconds, it started. So that means that it's not something horrible. He gave me a list of other things to check just damage wise. He said the rubber exhaust hose is cooled by water. Without water flow it can catch on fire. Terrifying. Didn't know that, luckily. It has probably been severely damaged along with the muffler and water trap. These are generally fiberglass. All the exhaust pathway stuff needs to be inspected. So I'm gonna start by pulling everything out of the las and just inspect all of that stuff. This is a hardy little beast though, the red bastard, so I'm hoping that she's okay. And then I'm gonna keep working my way down the water line. Today's work is gonna be pulling off the impeller pump and then taking off this connection, checking this connection, and then it goes into here, and this is where it gets trickier. Because to get this off, I have to get off the flywheel. So it's really weird. No matter what I do and how far along the line I follow in the engine, I can't find anything wrong with it. I can't find any blockages or anything. I don't really know what to do next. So I'm gonna give that a pause. The whole line is free from the saltwater intake all the way to where it goes into the engine. So I think the next step is probably going to be flushing it out, but that's a problem for another day. So I'm on to the more pressing problem, which is Gek's bottom. Okay, I am going to wire wheel the keel while Dan is continuing on the bottom. So I've got this wire wheel here. My respirator, not that you really need it for a wire wheel, but I'm working right next to Dan who's standing, so I do need it for the bottom paint stuff that I don't want to breathe in. And eye protection wire wheels are notoriously terrifying because the little wires often come off. Classically in boat style, what I thought was going to be a really fast and easy haul out ended up being about 3 times as long, but one of the things that happened was when the boatyard pressure washed Gek's hull, a bunch of the gel coat flaked off with the bottom paint, which left these huge, sore, bubbly indent marks in her hull. And so we had 2 options. We could ignore them because it wasn't osmosis and not through to the fiberglass, or we could fare the entire hull and repair them. And we decided to go for the way more labor-intensive but correct decision, which was to fix the problem in sanding all the bottom paint off first of all, and then epoxy filling all the holes. We basically put a layer of epoxy glue over the entire hull, sanded that off, put it on again, sanded that off, then primer, tie coat, bottom paint. It was an intense job, but at the end of it gained about 1.5 knots of speed once we were back in the water. Okay, we're having a workday party. We have a lot of people coming out to Rich and Mel, team epoxy filler, and make it all pretty and smooth again. So all of this came off when they power washed it. It's just like where the shells are stuck to the gel coat flaked off, and then this is where the top of the rudder connects. So they're just gonna fill these holes in so that I can re-drill them and just have a more solid connection. We have our Hippie rep right here.
You can't film me, I'm just watching Andy work. Film Andy and I'm moral support. Like, yeah, good work, buddy.
And then check it out, I never even knew that my propeller was this color and it had numbers on it.
Yeah, okay.
The guys are working on the bottom, and I'm going to be continuing to troubleshoot the engine. You guys will remember Rich and Mel from previous episodes. They gave us all their spare bottom paint, primer, epoxy, acetone, etc. for the haul out. We've had some delicious meals with them and some really fun times. From the rum carboy. Rich makes his own rum.
Christmas cake rum.
Christmas cake rum, and he is generously donating to the rum sharing cause.
Very generously. This is 5 litres of rum. I'm getting a little bit of a job from the dog.
I'm so keen to see how long this lasts.
And not only are we receiving rum, but also we've got some homemade mead, as delivered by Mel. And the sniffy little doggo.
Wow.
Look at this.
This is a lot.
This is a lot of liquor. So they're going to come across the magnetic, and I think we'll make a decent effort on this.
We might take some with them.
Yeah, we might allow them to have a little bit. You're pretty close to the top according to this team.
Are we?
Yeah.
Andy, of course, pops by every day after work to check on us, bring us tools, beers, and loan us the use of his muscles. Rich and Mel had the weekend off and chose to spend the entire time sanding and epoxying, which if you're in the know, you know what an amazing and selfless gift that is. Sanding bottom paint in the hot Australian sun is not something to be coughed at, and their labor probably saved Dan and I about 4 days if we had been trying to work on it ourselves, and potentially our sanity. Actually, definitely our sanity. I have Rich epoxy filling the holes in the rudder, Mel is sanding the bottom, Andy is doing the propeller and the prop shaft, Dan is doing some scraping behind where the rudder went. I'm working on the engine. This is crazy. This is so cool. Also, Mel is dressed in 2 of my clothes, and she has like very similar shorts to what I have. So I might do a series, Holly versus Mel, who is who. So I'm just gonna run to the chandlery. I need to replace this O-ring, this hose, and the sink. In the process of doing the through hulls. The sink, I did a really shit repair in French Polynesia and kind of forgot about it, but the thing that went through it is basically completely gone, so I bumped it and it fell off. If you bump at something and it falls off, you know you need to fix it, so I'm gonna see if I can find another little through guy for that. So I'm heading to the chandlery, and I also need to get some Sikaflex. And yeah, might time lapse the team. Trying to find the leak. I'm replacing this hose because it's a bit melted here in the center, and it was a bit melted onto the impeller. I think just water damage from, or heat damage from an overheated. And I found this very fun yellow and blue hose. It's high pressure, not high heat, but that shouldn't matter because it's going from the impeller into the engine, so it shouldn't have high heat water. Obviously I didn't pick it for its color. This was just the only size that's available, but it does match the oil dipstick really nicely, so that pleases me greatly. So I got a new impeller, replacing all of that stuff, greasing it up, and then I'm just in the process of emptying out the las again so that I can get in behind and check to see if there's any blockages on the other side of the engine. Okay, I'm in the troll hole. I'm looking at the back of the engine, and there's all this oil on it, which makes me, I don't know where it's coming from though. It almost looks like it's coming out from here. Quick side note from the editing station, this oil leak has existed for over a year, so it's not something that I messed up when I ran the engine too hot. But what I'm gonna do now is disconnect this line, because this is where the raw water cooling goes in and mixes with the exhaust manifold to cool that down. So in order to flush the engine, I want to take this out, because otherwise it's possible that the water will go back up into the engine without the engine on. So when the engine's on, the exhaust gets pushed out of here pretty aggressively and the salt water mixes to cool it down. Without the engine on, if you put water into here, it'll just go back up into the cylinder, which is bad. No good, very bad. So I'm gonna take this off, and then I'm just gonna look at this line to see if there's anything wrong with this. I'm inspecting here for any signs of overheating, but it looks fine. And then I'm also going to check this where it mixes. Interesting development. I just took this guy off and it's dripping water, which means that there must be, like, if the engine had been running dry, I feel like there wouldn't be water in the system, although I'm not sure. This noise that you hear is just all the sanding that's going on. I took the raw water cooling line off where it mixes into the exhaust manifold so that when I flush the engine, the water doesn't come back up into the exhaust manifold and potentially into the engine. When the engine's on, there's enough pressure coming out of it that the water won't mix back up in. And then I also took the hose off the engine side just so that I could check that hose to see if there were any blockages, and there weren't. That hose runs up through a vented loop and then back down into the exhaust elbow. But what we're going to do now is we're going to put a freshwater hose onto the front side of the engine just on the other side of the impeller pump and flush some fresh water through the engine to see what happens. One of the first things I checked was the impeller, which seemed to be fine, but I'm replacing that anyway just in case. Damage here, so I'm going to take this off and replace it because that's pretty bad. That probably wouldn't let out water, but it would let out exhaust, which we don't want. So the next test that we did was taking this hose, and I connected it up to where the other side of the impeller usually connects to the engine. Here, now the engine's full of water and it was leaking out, so I just stuck this on. But I connected the hose up to this pipe because the impeller goes from there up into here. And we ran the water, and the water ran clear through the engine at pretty high speed, which actually knocked out some gunk. So the next thing I'm gonna do is connect the impeller back up. I bought a new impeller, so I'm going to stick that on, lube it up, replace the paper gasket, just take some really light grit sandpaper and clean this up a bit here so that it has a nice face to sit on. Put that all back together and then try to start the engine and see what happens. I'm out of all the little bowls that I use to hold the screws are being used because I'm in work mode, so now I'm just using the top of my coffee pot, and this is all the impeller stuff that's in here. This is the final test. I've replaced the impeller and the O-ring and lubed everything up with glycerin and replaced this line. We've run water through the engine, everything goes. So now it's time to start her up, so I'm just going to open up the sea strainer and pour water through. Hopefully, if it sucks out of here, that means that everything is good, and it must have just been something funky with the impeller, and if it doesn't, then we have more problems. Oh, okay, engine started up, water came out, water was sucked in, water came out, so it must have been there was that O-ring on the impeller that was squished. There was a lot of dirt in the impeller, so it must have just been that wasn't quite pumping enough water. So now I just have to take off the exhaust hose because of that crack that's in it that definitely needs to be replaced. It's always easier to bring in the hose you want replaced because then you get the exact right measurements and the exact right length. Put away the engine, put away all the stuff that was in the LAS, and then I can come in and pop on some of the sanding under the boat projects that Mel, Rich, and Dan have been working on all day, although I must say it's been pretty nice having this project because sanding is terrible. Another day, another dollar. Today we're sanding off the epoxy work that we did yesterday. On Sunday, Rich and Mel came back to help us finish up sanding off all the bottom paint. Now that I was done with the engine, there were 4 of us swapping out the 2 sanders and taking on other small peripheral jobs. We finished the sanding about an hour before sunset. After a quick meal eaten on pieces of wood under the boat, Rich and Mel insisted on staying on and applying the first layer of epoxy glue onto the hull. We worked under the lights as the sun slunk out of the sky, and finally finished in total darkness, absolutely exhausted. I'm doing my French Polynesia look, same green shirt. This is what the guys in the yards did there. Dan has a little buff thing, but all of the other one is super dirty, so I'm not gonna be wearing it, so I'm gonna be doing this trick. Looking fly. And it's just sandy sandy all day, painty painty. That's pretty much it. I bought my new exhaust hose today, and so I'm installing that underneath the las. And while I'm at it, I'm going to do some organizing, pull everything out, clean up under there because it's kind of become a bit of a dumping ground. And there's definitely some stuff that can be thrown out and some stuff that can be much better organized. While I'm doing that, Dan is going to start putting some Sikaflex into the joint between the keel and the hull that he's been scraping goop out of. I'm just gonna bring down some beer. The beer of the haul out has been Kilkenny, so this is the fridge that Andy's loaning us. Yeah, we've just been guzzling Kilkenny, although I'm really enjoying this alcoholic ginger beer. It's super tasty. So we're gonna split one of these, and then I'm gonna get on with my own projects. What I did is I saw that there were these holes in the overhead, kind of right where the exhaust hose is led, and this guy wasn't quite long enough, so I screwed him in on one end, and then I took a zip tie that I just happened to have down with me because I didn't feel like going up again, and I made it into a loop through the other end of this and did it up to the right height, and then put a screw through his little head and screwed it in. So that's how that one's held up, and this one's held up properly here, and then it just goes into the muffler there. And while I was down here, I made this hanging line back here, which I did this in Polynesia, but I didn't do a very good job of it, and it came undone. But I've screwed this little holder into here, and then put this line through it, and then this guy. So I'm gonna tie all my lines and stuff off to that one, just because this is such a pit. It's really easy for it to be disorganized, but it's huge, so it holds a lot of stuff. It's pouring rain right now. We woke up to a big squall, and we've left all of our old work clothes outside. So Dad and I are gonna go wash them in the truck in the rain. I'll just grab this up. Well, at least we know the dust drains are working. Yeah, that's deck water, probably not very clean. Oh yeah, definitely. Right when we were in the middle of our ridiculous escapade, Andy turned up. Dan and I like to think of this as the solidifying moment in our friendship with Andy. If he could still be friends with us after this, then we knew it was the real deal.
One at a time, and I can actually see if it comes out.
It's been pretty rainy all day. I went out and did a bunch of errands that needed to happen, and it was just kind of the perfect opportunity to do it. I got some new bolts to put on the plate that goes on the bottom of this gag. I picked up my lifelines, which we got shortened. Went to the hardware store to pick up some items that we need for painting, like gloves and rollers and tape and just consumables that we keep running out of. And there's a brief pause in the rain, so we're gonna jump out and rig up and get as much sanding as we can get done before it starts raining again. It was pretty rainy all morning, but no foul. Andy's letting us do laundry at his house, so I'm wearing my second tier work clothes, which are the ones that aren't quite official disgusting work clothes yet, but they're on their way to becoming such. So this is my sanding outfit. Ah la la. We are very festive today. It's nighttime. We've been working for the entire evening because it stopped raining, and we just really want to get this stuff done. I'm getting hungry because it's 7:15. We haven't stopped yet, so just loading up on my snacks in my work pants. I just have a pocket full of cashews, and that's how I roll. Today is the day. 4.5 days of sanding, epoxy filling, more sanding, working at night, working early in the morning, and we're finally ready to tape the boat and put on the first layer of primer. I primed the keel last night at around 8:30 at night by headlamp, which was fun, and now the fun part starts, which is painting. Feels like you're actually getting somewhere. Okay, we just finished the primer coat, the first one. Rich and Mel gave us some of their leftovers and it just did one coat on the boat, so I'm gonna go pick up more because we want to do 2 coats of primer. It goes on pretty thin, so I think it's gonna need at least another coat or 2 before it's thick enough to actually do its job. But I put a little love glove over the propeller to protect it, literally a glove, and taped up the skeg and the prop shaft just to protect them from the paint a bit. 2-part epoxy primer on the keel, different one from the one on the hull because the keel is cast iron, so it's one specific to metal, but it uses the same part B, different part A. We're using Yote Mastic 90 off-white 2-part epoxy primer for the boat, and then this one is the one for the keel. It's a cast iron keel, so it's got the keel one, and then it just has these little pots over there. The part B is the same for the keel primer and the hull primer. 90 standard 40, and I got it on my fingers. The last of the epoxy primer's on. Now the only thing we have to prime is the repair on the skeg. And Dan has just gotten covered in the stuff, so I'm gonna hose him down.
Yeah. Okay, steady, straight. Up. Oh, high.
Next step is the tie coat, which you put between the primer and the bottom paint, which ties the two together literally. We got up early in the morning because time was passing quickly and we wanted to try to get all the coats on that we needed before the end of the day. And very last but not least, the bottom paint itself, we did 3 coats of this to get it extra thick so that I don't have to haul it again for a very, very long time. For watching this episode, and thanks Rich, Mel, and Andy for your tireless, endless support during this haul out. Honestly, couldn't have done it without you, and when I look back at all this footage as I'm editing it, I see how lucky we were. Like, in the moment, we were working our asses off every single day, and it felt really overwhelming and time-consuming, and I can see myself getting more and more tired towards the end of the haul out when I edit the footage, but then I also see how much time these guys put into helping us, and what's not shown is all of the dinners, all of the meals brought to us, the beers brought to us, the showers, the laundry, the friendship, the good times, the laughs. I'm just showing mostly the work stuff, but there's so much more. Yeah, endlessly thankful to all of you guys, and hope that we can all meet up at some point in the world again. Hello. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Thanks for your comments. Oh, if anyone has any advice that is useful about the oil leak thing behind my engine, I'm still trying to figure out the oil leak. I thought it was the oil line for ages, but I don't think it is. It's a Buick DV10. Let me know in the comments. I'd really appreciate it. At a bit of a loss here. This April in the BVIs, I am captaining a catamaran for the Odyssey Sailing Festival. So if you'd like to come sail with me for a week in the BVIs and party and chat, I have a link in the description below where you can click around and see what it's all about. So come join me for sailing if you want to, and if not, then don't. I'll see you out there in the world on our own as free birds that we are. Oh, I'm tired. Thank you to my patrons who are supporting me and making this trip possible. If you'd like to become a patron, my Patreon is patreon.com/windhippie, and you guys get exclusive videos on the weeks that I don't put out YouTubes about whatever you want to see. Also just real-time updates in my life, because these videos lag behind by quite a few months, and yeah, extras. For one-time donations, I have a PayPal, paypal.me/windhippie if you want to help with some of those holiday expenses. That's much appreciated. Okay, also thanks for your comments. I love your comments, and thank you, Tish, for helping me put all of these videos online, because I edit them here on my wee little boat and then often struggle getting them uploaded because the internet's not always good where I am. Right now I'm in Indonesia. Haven't had internet connection for days. So that is all for now, I think. Is that all for now? Oh, I do have merchandise in the description below. You will see the links to that. That is all for now. See you guys next week, patrons of the snack and YouTube people. I'll see you in 2 weeks with another full-length episode.